Hello everyone. Today I'll show you how you can create such complex points arrangements where each point, as you can see here, has a specific rotation and translation in order to have these curved rows and every single chair to be oriented to the stage, and also each row has different number of chairs, so the row at the back is bigger than the row at the front, and you will not need any math knowledge or to think of a way to dynamically produce this. You just ask ChatGPT to do it for you, and I'll show you how you can integrate this later into Unreal Engine using data tables. So I have this left manually created graph, which, as you can see, is very similar to this automatically generated from ChatGPT. So you can use this approach for stuff that you cannot produce manually, or for just a simpler graph and faster execution, because this graph with ChatGPT version is only loading the data from the CSV file, which you can edit in Excel or ask ChatGPT to edit it for you. So I think it's a very good approach for prototyping or even for final creation of some very complicated shapes that you cannot think of a way to do it manually. So let's start by exploring how the two examples are created and how I managed to do the prompt for ChatGPT in order to get me to this result at the end. First, let's start with seeing how we can understand what is the file structure that we need and how to tell ChatGPT to create it for us. So let's go here into the example folder that I have for this graph here. So you can see that I have 3 graphs generated from ChatGPT, and I'll show you the results of each of them. So if I go into my graph, you can see that the graph is only consisted from a couple of nodes, and they are mostly not related to the placement at all. So let me show you what each of these nodes does. This static mesh spawner and the transform points are used for the generation of these ground cubes. If you have your scene with already created platforms for your chairs, for example, you'll not need this anyway. It's just for easier demonstration here, because if I don't have anything, it's a little bit hard to see the chairs. So here I'm only rotating the chairs 180 degrees because this model is facing the other way. So this is just simple fix of the rotation of the static mesh. I'm spawning the mesh and I'm just loading the data table that ChatGPT generated and saving the position and rotation in the proper values for my points. Then I'm copying all these points in the place of my blueprint, so I can move this blueprint whenever I want, and all the points will move with it. Otherwise, they'll just keep the coordinates that are saved into the data table. So let's now check the 3 data tables that it generated for me, and I'll show you how I asked the ChatGPT bot to generate it for me. Let's go into the data tables folder. So the first one, the original table that it generated, was this, which had the chairs very close to each other, didn't have this curve, and also I was not happy with the final result. So let's see the next one. I added an additional prompt and it created this one. So it created the arc. It's in the wrong direction and the chairs are still very close to each other. So the final result that I got was this one, concert seating final. And I told him that I want the curve to be in the other direction and how I want the place to be spaced, and everything is fine now. So you just have this single file, which I'll now show you. It contains the row name and the position of each element, the rotation, the translation, and the scale. And everything is generated by ChatGPT, so no need for you to think of the logic how these things are generated. You just need to tell him how you want the results, and it will do everything for you. So let me show you how you'll know the proper syntax for your CSV file. So first, in order to create a data table, you need a structure to tell it how each row should look like. And I created this structure variable, this structure asset here. Let me open it. So it just contains a single variable called position, and it's of a type transform. So you can do this by right-clicking, searching for structure, creating this structure seed tutorial, let's say, and I'll then call this default variable position, and I'll change the type to transform. And this is everything I did. I save this, and then you can create a data table. So right click, search for data table. And when you create a data table, it will ask you to pick the row structure, and we will pick the row structure that we just created, the seed tutorial version. And this will create a new data table. Let's call it new data table. Default name is fine. I'll just use it to see the structure. So if I open this data table, if I create a single item in it, and then I save this asset with this save all button, right click on your data table, and here at the top you can see that you have export as CSV button. You can export this file and save it to your hard drive. Then find the file that you saved, and if you open the file, you'll see that it has all the data that we saw here into the data table, but in a single text file. And I'll show you now how it looks. I copied the content of the file, which is this one. I actually, in the example that I prepared, I had a core variable as well, so you'll not have this. But just to see what my prompt is, I copied the original prompt, so you can follow these guidelines in order to get similar results. So you ask ChatGPT to generate a data table in CSV format with this structure, and you just paste the full content of the file. Then you explain what everything in this structure is. So I'm telling it that the position is with coordinates x, y, and z, and the rotation is quaternion with values x, y, z, and w. And I have changed the values from 000 to some other values in order to be easier to explain what each attribute is. Having some different values make it easier for ChatGPT to understand what values are you referring. Because if you have the same values, for example, 1, 2, 3, or 000 like default, it will be harder to understand what every value is. And then you ask him to generate items so that the position and the rotation correspond to placement of seats in a concert hall with 400 seats, front row with about 30 seats, and each row behind will add a chair to each side so it's wider, and fan outs to the back. And so on. You continue to explain what do you want. You want to have a unique name for each row, and I'm asking it to generate an arc on the position on the y-axis, so all my chairs will be placed in this arc fashion. So the first file that is generated, as you saw earlier, will be with very, very dense seeds placement. So I just told him here to add a little bit more space and to curve the items in an arc in the Y direction. And it generated the second file where the arc was in the wrong direction and the chairs were still a little bit too close. So this time I asked him for the third time that I want the arc to be the other way, a little bit less pronounced, and that I want some more space between the chairs in the X direction. And this is the final file that it generated for me. I can show you what are the differences between the files. So now that you saw the prompts, you can understand better what it generated. So here are the data tables. This is the original file from the first prompt. So now I loaded the original file. You can see everything is bunched up. So then the second file, the arc is wrong direction and still too close to each other. And then the final file after my final prompt, everything seems fine. So you can continue asking him to fix the positions to get what you want. But generally, if you have the free version, you will need to do it the other day because the prompts that are using the more advanced version of ChatGPT are limited to a couple for a day. So just make sure that you have everything explained with a lot of details in your prompt so you have a better chance to get it from the first time. And now let's see what is the other way that you can create this and why does it have some benefits as well. So first, let's see the PCG graph for this and how you can create this and how simple it is, because you're just basically loading every point from just this data table. So let's delete everything here and we'll start again. So to start, I left just the nodes for static mesh spawner in order to not select the seed again and the cube. So to start, you just right click, search for data table and choose this load data table node. Then here into the data table field, you just connect your data table that you created with ChatGPT, or you can create it with any other software as long as it's just saving a CSV file with a proper format. You're loading this table, you're outputting a point, and because the points that you output, let me inspect this node with clicking the A key and selecting here the graph placed into the level. If you don't have this PCG graph put into the level, you will not have anything here. Let me show you. If I delete this PCG from my level and I go back here, if I inspect this, I have nothing. But if I place it in the level, then I can inspect the instance that I have in my level. If I place it one more time, it will have two instances and so on. Let me delete the second one. And let's check now the data for the first one. So if I inspect this and check my data, you can see that the position, rotation, and the scale is all zeros. And actually the value that we saved is here into some other columns, the position dot position, position dot rotation, and position dot scale. And the scale is just one for everything, so we don't need to worry about that. But in order to get the fields into the proper attribute that we need them, so this original position and rotation with the $sign, we'll just use the copy attributes command, and we will have the source, this position attribute that we got here, position, and inside this position attribute we have the position for the actual position value that we need. So position dot position will be copied inside the original position value. So I have some error here at my naming. So like this, it's fine. So now I'll have another one that I'll use to copy the position dot rotation inside the rotation value of my points. And if I connect this to the spawning node, you can start seeing that all of my points are already having this proper placement. And the problem is that when I move the blueprint, they're always spawned here at the origin of the level. So I need to copy all of these points. So choose the copy points node. And for the target, I'll get actor data. I'll choose the self actor here, and I'll get a single point. So this is the point that our actor is placed, and I'll have it as a target for my copy points. And now you can see that I can place my blueprint and move it, and everything is moved with it. The problem is that it's just scaled in every direction. So let's go back into the level and here change the scale of this blueprint to of this PCG graph to 1, 1, and 1. And now I can scale, rotate, and move this however I want, and all the seeds will be placed based on this ChatGPT data table. So let me connect the ground elements as well. Here I'll need to do a transform points because I want the ground to be a little bit lower than the chairs. I'll put -50, for example, and I'll connect it. And this will place the chairs under the ground under the chairs. And also I want to rotate my chairs. So transform points and rotate them 180 degrees in Z. And now you can see they're all facing the middle. You have individual placement and rotation calculated for each of these chairs based on this data table. You didn't have to do any math or to think of the logic how you can do this. So I think this is very, very powerful tool. Hope that you will find very useful ways to use it. And now let's compare this very simple graph with the graph that I needed to create this manually. I'll not recreate the whole graph. If you want me to show how it's created and why each step needs that, just write in the comments that you want me to recreate this graph on some of my next videos. But the base logic is that you create this graph to place the points. So you create a grid for the row and for the column, and then you need to have a loop that adds additional seeds on each row. So each row will have one more seed at the beginning and at the end. So it has this fanning out to the back pattern, which is used for most curved holes, or for example for stadiums or something like this. And then you adjust each seed position and rotation. So you again need a couple of other loops that have, as you can see, each one has more logic than our graph that just used the ChatGPT table. So this is the full graph for our ChatGPT table. And for the other graph, we have 4 different PCG graphs that we are using together, and some of them are looping through each row or each seed in order to have this result. But the benefit of this is that if you can create this logic manually, then you can adjust it. For example, if you want the row to be not so much curving to the inside. You can change a value, and then you have much more flatter rows, or you can have a bigger curve, for example. Or you can do any other change that you could not do here into the ChatGPT table, but this will be very, very easy to do for any pattern that you want, because the AI will generate whatever you want, and you will not need to create these graphs. So the simple graph for the ChatGPT took me like 5 minutes, and the other one took me a couple of hours to do. So you can see the benefit. And guys, I hope this helps you to understand how to use data tables in Unreal Engine and how you can use AI to help you generate these tables. If you have some questions, write in the comments. If you like this tutorial, please like and subscribe for the channel. And you can join the channel into the higher levels. You can watch the videos earlier, so you can ask your questions earlier. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.